Hello and welcome to Psychgeist, where we talk about the psychology of the era, the science of games. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Kowert, and on today's episode of Psychgeist, I'm going to be giving a presentation that I gave back in August of 2024 at the Something Digital Festival. It's called People, Not Pixels, and it's talking about the transformative power of games in shaping our future. As you know, I try to create a repository here of some of the talks I've given in the past, so they're not just limited to the people who are in the room. And I feel like enough time has passed that it will be okay to present this to you now and leave it here for eternity. Here we are, People Not Pixels, the transformative power of games in shaping our future. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Rachel Kowert. If you're at this channel, you probably know that, but just in case you do not, I'm a research psychologist who's been studying video games and those who play them, their uses and effects for just about 15 years. Now, a lot of time when we talk about games, we talk about the pixels, right? The actual art and the design of the games. But lest we forget that it is people who are navigating these spaces. So today I'm here to talk about the power of our pixelated playgrounds to transform the people within them, the world around us, to create futures that were once only our wildest dreams. And speaking of dreams, let's talk about my dreams for the future, because what kind of psychologist would I be if I didn't lay on a proverbial couch and tell you about my dreams? Now, if I were on this couch, you're Freud in this scenario, and you asked me if I could give you an all-powerful tool to transform the future of the world, what would you do with that tool? What would your dreams be to change the world? For me, it would probably start with accessible education. Education that is accessible anytime, any place, anywhere by anyone. There are dramatic disparities in access to education geographically and by socioeconomic status. Education is the key to freedom, and offering equal opportunities for personal growth and development would be a pretty great thing. I would also probably talk about a genuine global community, genuine social connection across gender, age, geography, and language. And in that community, we'd be able to have genuine empathy building, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another who is not like us, who experiences things we do not experience. We would have empathy, not disdain, not ridicule, and not stereotyping. Genuine community. And last, I would probably talk about mobilizing scientific participation because I told you these were my dreams, okay? And I have spent many an hour waiting for people to come into the lab and do experiments and shared many a link for an online survey, only for like 5 people on my LinkedIn to do it. All right. So believe me, I spent a lot of time dreaming about ways to mobilize scientific participation and to unite researchers and citizens around our shared causes, research and advocacy on topics that are important to us. So this is quite a list. It's got some lofty goals. And now I know I said these are my lay on the couch and tell me about your mother kind of dreams of an idealized future that I would wish for. And you're probably thinking that I'm going to tell you that games are the tools that will take us to an idealized future. But actually, neither of those are true. What if I told you that this list is actually a list that reflects the way that games have already transformed the world around us? They've also brought to life my fantasy of wielding a big sword and killing scary monsters, and if you know, you know. But that's a different talk for a different day. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, wait a minute here. We can all get behind, games have changed the world. But are you sure it's for the better? Because with the exception of living our best life as a witcher with a sword, can we all really agree that games have been a positive impact in our lives? Because, come on, Rachel, we all know that games plus brain equal all the bad things, right? Violence, addiction, shortened attention spans, etc. Now, this idea is a pervasive one held by many people around the world and perhaps many people watching this video right now that see games as often a waste of time at best and the cause of all society's problems at worst. Now, I could get into the weeds and wax poetic for the rest of my time here about how there is no scientific evidence to directly link video games as a unique and significant contributor to any of these outcomes. I'm not going to do that. I will do that if we ever meet in a room and you ask nicely, or I have a bunch of other YouTube videos on this channel for that. Instead, I'm going to ask you that for the next 20 minutes or so, you trust me. I'm a doctor, you can trust me. That this equation is wrong. And it isn't brain plus games equals angry, frowny face. It's actually brain plus games equals legendary things. Because while being blamed for making the world worse, games have actually been making the world better. Games have already catalyzed positive change individually, societally, and across humanity. And I know that sounds dramatic, and I promise you I'm not being dramatic. Games have truly changed humanity for the better, and specifically in relation to my dreams. They've given us greater access to education. They have helped foster genuine connection, and they have made us more legendary. And by this, I mean they have helped us mobilize scientific participation. And with the rest of my time here today, I'm going to be telling you about how they have been doing that. Now, I want to acknowledge that what I'm saying right now is very likely a different narrative that many of you have likely heard from the news or the media or your friends across the street, which is exactly why I'm giving this talk, to dispel the myths that may have held us back from thinking about games as tools for positive cultural societal change, and to expand our collective minds about what we think games are and what they are not, so we can all feel empowered to explore, embrace, and unleash the power of games as tools to continue to transform realities and create futures that maybe were once only our wildest dreams. So with that, let's start with more education. By the time I graduated college, I had organized and led hundreds of people from various geographical backgrounds, education and skill and language in large-scale, complex tasks. I had trained dozens of others to become experts in my area of expertise, and I had received numerous accolades from my peers. How did I do that, you ask? I led groups in World of Warcraft. For those who aren't familiar with World of Warcraft, it is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game released in 2004. These kinds of games, they're called MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. They're unique in the world of online games because they are persistent, ever-changing worlds. That is, they continue to change and grow even when you're not actively playing in it. So I can start a project, I can leave, and I can come back and someone else could have finished it. It's like its own little microcosm, its own little world. Now, these games are massively populated. The MMO, in its peak in 2021, it had 9.5 million monthly subscribers. 9.5 million people across the globe coming together in a shared space to accomplish a collective goal, one of which is to slay this guy, obviously. Now, when I was in my World of Warcraft era, I played a lot. I love this game. I had a schedule. I had a position of leadership. I would lead groups to epic wins or epic fails. And for me, it was fun. It was stress relief. It was a sweet Friday night. Yes, I've always been this way. But there was also a whole lot of what we call unintentional learning happening. I was learning leadership skills. I was learning how to think flexibly. I was learning about resource management, creative thinking, a wide range of social skills to be able to engage with people of different ages and cultures. I was learning prioritization, negotiation, crisis management, conflict management, all from the comfort of my college apartment. So here I am thinking I'm having a sweet Friday night, and really I'm learning how to optimize spreadsheets in Excel. Anyone who was an N-level raider in World of Warcraft, raise your hand. So many spreadsheets. Now, before you start to think that these skills are limited to these spaces, they're not. First of all, my Excel skills serve me well today. But second of all, we do know from the research these skills do transfer to other contexts, to the point where employers are asking potential employees about their experiences in online games on job resumes. The way that games have revolutionized education through the accessibility of unintentional learning, learning through play, something we do as kids, but kind of throw to the wayside as adulthood, seeing any value in the things we learn through play. We stop to see any value in the things we learn from play as adults, which is silly. We shouldn't do that. These spaces are accessible nearly anytime, any place, anywhere, and they're teaching us a range of skills that serve us throughout our lives and throughout our careers. And that's just unintentional learning. There's an entire industry focused on intentional learning space, like Math Blaster, my childhood Math Blaster, equations on a screen, and you blast the answer. Seems a little daft now, but like as a kid, this was peak. Lest we forget Oregon Trail, classic. If nothing else, it taught us the word dysentery. These kinds of games created for education, have come a long way. There are literally thousands of games I can mention here. New math games, Endless Learning Academy, which is one of my favorites, Minecraft Education Edition. But I do want to mention one that may seem less obvious as a game created specifically for education, and that is Fortnite. If you have a teenager, you've probably heard of this game. It is an online game made by Epic Games where players battle other players to be the last one standing. They also have other game modes like tower defense and even a creative mode where you have the freedom to create worlds and battle arenas. There are 70 million monthly active players and 400 million registered users of this game. Now, this isn't perhaps the educational game you thought I was going to mention. And I could talk about things like hand-eye coordination and communication skills and teamwork. It is certainly teaching all of that. But did you also know that within Fortnite, there's a Holocaust museum? It's also referred to as Voices of the Forgotten. It was added to the game in 2023. 80% of Americans say they have not visited a Holocaust museum. Knowing this, game designer Luke Bernard designed this virtual museum to be housed in Fortnite, highlighting people who resisted the Nazis and highlighting other historical figures from the Holocaust. Putting this into Fortnite, where there are 70 million monthly active players, is truly revolutionary. And to put this into perspective, Fortnite also has an MLK exhibit. There are 3.3 million visitors per year to the MLK Memorial in Washington, D.C. 3.3 million a year. On the first day the MLK experience was in Fortnite, 8 million people came. 8 million people attended the experience in one day. Games are providing new avenues to put educational materials like this in a place where people already are. Games are also making us more connected, and they're doing so in meaningful ways. Specifically, they're helping us feel less lonely. Loneliness is a state of solitude or being alone. It is a state of mind, okay? It's the feeling of being empty and alone and unwanted. It's not the physical reality of whether you're actually alone, although the two could be related. If you've ever heard the phrase like being in a room full of people but still feel alone, like that's loneliness. Now, as a society, we are in a loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General published this report in 2023 describing our epidemic of loneliness and isolation happening in the U.S., but I would argue across the world. He cites a decline in social networks, a decline in social participation and community involvement, alongside an increase in people living alone, all as indicators of increased loneliness. He also talks about how loneliness not only impacts our psychological well-being, but our physical well-being. A lack of social connection and loneliness is associated with a range of negative physical outcomes, increased risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes and lower cognitive function, higher rates of depression and anxiety, and even mortality rates. Loneliness is tied to our very ability to exist, right? Now, this point is particularly poignant, this last one, when we also consider that for the first time in human history, our average lifespan is shortening. Enter games, specifically online games. There have been dozens of research studies that have found people who play online games are less lonely than people who do not. And there seems to be a linear relationship. Playing more online games, you are less likely to report loneliness. Now, this is actually more profound than maybe it seems at first glance, because research has found that it's not frequent interaction that alleviates loneliness. It is meaningful interaction. So we're seeing increased well-being from increased social connection, such as talking to neighbors or colleagues, but that doesn't necessarily translate into a decrease in loneliness. So this is the difference between feeling heard and being seen. And in games, people are saying that they feel seen, that the friendships formed within them are meaningful and important, which may come to a surprise to some because we've long been taught that games are less than pretty much anything else. Less important uses of our time, less quality uses of our time. The social connections are less important, they're less meaningful, but research tells a different story. While social community can be found on many different spaces on the internet, the social bonds made in games are different, and they look more like this, certainly when it comes to comparing friendships made in other online spaces. Playing together is a fundamentally different social process than the other ways we commune. Friendships between co-players tend to be close, intimate, and long-lasting friendship bonds, unlike the loose and diffuse ties that typically characterize relationships made online. Research reports between 40 and 70% of game players regularly discuss offline issues with their online friends, including concerns they have not yet discussed with offline friends. So these relationships, they're serving as primary sources of social and emotional support. They are close bonds. And games are able to foster the formation of close, tight-knit friendships because of the nature of the shared activity themselves. Having the shared experience of the game, essentially, it emotionally jumpstarts social relationships between players, leading friendships to form backwards. So trust is established first, and then you get to know them. Whereas in traditional relationships, you get to know them and slowly learn if they can trust them. So they have this little boosting emotional jumpstart at the beginning of the friendships forming. Now, the social and emotional impact of relationships between co-players also very rarely lives exclusively in online contexts, because online and offline is a false dichotomy. And I've said it once, and I'm going to say it again. And when I get my TED Talk, that'll be my tagline. Okay, these spaces are not mutually exclusive. They're fluid. We take our offline friends online, our online friends offline, and the effects of what happens online impacts offline and vice versa. A good way to think about this is cyberbullying. We have a really good touch point. We know that being bullied online leads to vast detrimental negative impacts offline. But the same is true for the positive effects, this relationship building, the development of close social emotional ties. This translates into our offline lives, in this case, in the form of reduced loneliness. Online friendships enhance feelings of belonging driven by trust, and players feel a deeper sense of belonging and more accepted by the gaming community than they are offline. This is just one of many research studies that have come to a similar conclusion. We feel seen by these friends, not just heard. Now, these relationships, feeling seen, this is starting to tap into that genuine part of genuine social community, that foundation of genuineness and kindness and empathy. But there is another aspect here I want to mention. Let's return to my World of Warcraft era, like anything to return to my glory days. When I had time to play MMOs, I have 3 children now, so no time for that anymore. When I was in my World of Warcraft era, I was playing with people from my home state of Texas. I was playing with people in Canada, in Germany, in the Netherlands. It was an incredible opportunity to connect with other cultures, people I would have never encountered. And research has found that these opportunities, these social opportunities, translate into real changes in the way we engage with others, and it can expand our world view, how we see and perceive others in the world who may not be from the same country as us or speak the same language. And perhaps the most surprising part is that for this to happen, you don't even necessarily have to be actively engaging with other players. Mere exposure through what we call being alone together, simply existing in the same space with a diversity of influence, can influence our sense of being connected to new places, communities, and societies. It can start to challenge stereotypes and beliefs we may hold across categories: race, gender, sexuality, mental health. Simply existing in the space creates valuable opportunities for learning, empathy building, and fostering kindness towards others. Now, combine that with AI language translation, right? Language isn't even a limitation anymore. These little pixels have brought people together into a shared community on a global level, and games are the vehicle that have brought us there. All right, so games have made us more educated. They've made us more connected. Now let's talk about how they're making us more legendary, specifically in the context of citizen science and advocacy. Games have been dubbed the next frontier for advocacy because games are really great at engaging people to be interested in a cause, but also in furthering our understanding about the scope and importance of any particular cause. I'd like to give you one specific example, and that's citizen science, because I said these are my dreams. Citizen science is a phrase that refers to scientific research being conducted with participation from the general public, which is not only a great way to get more people to participate in science, but also for the generalizability of our work that we do as researchers. Oftentimes, you get an 18 or 20-year-old psychology major as your primary participant, and that can make it sometimes difficult to generalize those findings to a broader population. Which is where we have citizen science. You have mobilizing the general population to participate in or advocate for science would be a great goal. It's also really hard to do, and nobody has really mastered it until games came along. Borderlands is a first-person shooter game that I would describe as space western science fiction fantasy. Sounds great, because it is. From Gearbox Studio, published by 2K Games. It was released in 2009. It had critical and wide acclaim. There are now 3 iterations of the series, and as of November 2022, which is the most recent number I could find, 77 million copies of these games have been shipped. Now, the total series net revenue from this series of games alone is over $1 billion, making it one of the most successful video game franchises of all time. Now, within the game, there are mini games that the players can play, and one of which is called Borderlands Science, which was put into Borderlands 3. So researchers at McGill in Canada were having difficulties getting people to volunteer and participate in their research, which involved sitting at a table to sequence microbe DNA. Yeah, I understand. Those 18 to 20-year-old psychology students were not into it. But then the researchers had an idea, And they connected with the massively multiplayer online Science, which is a company in Switzerland, and Gearbox, the game studio that makes Borderlands. And together they made Borderlands Science, which was a game inspired by Tetris. Here you can see what it looks like, the actual game, and then what the game looks like in the game. They put this little console, this little retro style arcade cabinet where the player's home base is. So you could go and you can play it. And if you play it, you can earn in-game rewards or like in-game currency to buy in-game rewards. Now, the players of Borderlands and Borderlands Science did not realize what they were doing is sorting nucleotides. They thought they were just correcting things and putting in more correct rows, but what they were actually doing is sequencing the DNA and identifying errors in the researchers' real-world analyses, the things that the researchers could not get people to do in their lab. It would be an understatement to say that Borderlands Science was incredibly successful. They have logged more than 80 million puzzle solutions. 80 million. You would have to live many, 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 many lives to get that many iterations of a scientific study done in the four walls of a university lab. Anyone who has tried to do research will understand the magnitude of what they have done here. And this isn't just like, oh, cool, like games help bolster scientific knowledge. The scale is unprecedented. For more context, Borderlands Science was based on Philo. Philo is one of the big, successful citizen science projects out there. It's very similar to Borderlands Science in that people sequence DNA. I think this was actually the original inspiration behind Borderlands Science. The day that Borderlands Science was launched in Borderlands 3, just the first day, the first 24 hours, they collected 5 times more data than Philo had collected in 10 years. That is the power of video games to achieve legendary things, and in this case, advancements in science. Playing this mini game inside of a bigger video game has fundamentally changed the way we understand the link between human gut microbes and diabetes and depression and anxiety and obesity, as well as the way we think about how we can engage the population with citizen science. I told you games change humanity. See, I wasn't lying. Excuse me. So for the last 20 minutes or so, I've talked about how games have brought my list of dreams into reality. It's giving us accessible education, it's fostered genuine global communities, and it's helped mobilize scientific participation. But the power of games has also helped shape many more of our current realities, as well as guiding our future in a wealth of other people's dreams in transformative and powerful ways. It's already changed the way we play and explore the world around us. It has provided opportunities for marginalized groups to feel seen and heard in ways they've not yet felt seen and heard. They've made efforts to destigmatize our collective perception of mental health challenges. They've changed the way we create, form, and mold our identities. And they've changed the way how we cope with crisis. Like, who was not playing Animal Crossing during COVID-19? You couldn't even get a Switch. Everyone was playing Animal Crossing. Now, before I leave you today, I want to once again return to this idea of online and offline as a false dichotomy, because I've spent my time here telling you how games have the transformative power to shape who we are and the world we live in and the futures before us. But what games are also doing in this process is showing us who we are as a society, what we are seeking and finding in games, and is showing us what it is we're all looking for. We want to learn. We want to be connected. We want to be more legendary, right? We want to be better able to advocate for the things we care about. We want to be able to find people who share our values, and we want to mobilize on a global scale. So I hope what you take away from this is not just how games have already empowered us to create new realities that are better than our wildest dreams, but that that we as humans are actively seeking spaces to bring these transformations to life. Games have given us the tools to create these transformations individually, societally, and across humanity. They've already made my dreams become a reality. And so now we can start to think about how they can help bring your dreams into this world, or maybe they have already. I hope this talk has helped demonstrate the power of games as a revolutionary force for shaping our world. And with that, I will leave you with what I always leave you with. Until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.